My husband became depressed because his ex-girlfriend made him regret marrying me. So, he asked me to remain faithful while he lived a single life. My husband was formally diagnosed with severe depression. It wasn't a very shocking revelation to me, as I had suspected for some time that my partner wasn't mentally well. This year, he seemed to be in deep mourning for the loss of his girlfriend and best friend. Both people meant a lot to him, and he was incredibly close to them. To put it into context, before San and I started dating, he and his ex had been in a serious relationship for a long time. Then, out of nowhere, she cheated on him with his best friend, someone he considered a brother. This betrayal hurt him deeply, marking the end of two of his most important relationships at once. After that, Sam remained single for a long time because he was afraid to trust anyone else. He needed time to deal with the pain and organize his emotions. When I met him, it seemed like he had made peace with it all and was trying to move on. Still, the hurt from being cheated on was still there, making him a little cautious. We dated for 4 wonderful years, going through ups and downs before we finally decided to get married. We had a beautiful wedding, surrounded by friends, family, and the people who mattered most to us. The day was filled with joy and love. I must say that, initially, S was an amazing partner, supportive, kind, and deeply thoughtful. The marriage brought us even closer, and for years we built a life together that seemed strong and promising. But then, at the beginning of this year, tragedy struck. San's ex-girlfriend and his ex-best friend died together in a car accident. The news hit him hard. For years, he had clung to resentment, but now with their deaths, he was overwhelmed by pain. He didn't expect something inside him to break completely. Sometimes, he would share with me how he wished he could have made things right with them. He expressed regret for not being able to reconcile, forgive them fully, or at least say what he thought. Knowing they were gone forever without the chance for closure seemed to weigh heavily on his heart. I reassured him, telling him it was normal to feel that way. After all, they had been a part of his life, but he started blaming himself for not fixing things with them before they lost their lives. You see, San's best friend had reached out several times over the years, apologizing and trying to make amends, but S couldn't bring himself to forgive him, and I don't blame him. I mean, it's not every day that your best friend sleeps with your partner, even if the apology was there. The pain of the past was something S couldn't just let go of. I comforted him, repeatedly reminding him that what happened wasn't his fault and that he had every right to protect himself from more hurt. But no amount of reassurance seemed to help him. Instead, S's pain only grew, spiraling into something darker and harder to control. He spent hours and hours just lying in bed, often losing entire days to video games or, sometimes, just staring at the wall with a beer in his hand. He started skipping work, calling in sick, or just staying home without explanation. I could see that he was sinking deeper into despair, and I tried my best to encourage him, to get him out of the house and do things that could help him feel better, even if just a little. I suggested little outings or anything that might offer a distraction, but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Due to his lack of motivation to go to work, he lost his job. So, I became the main breadwinner. Slowly after that, my husband's behavior started to change in other disturbing ways. His mood became unpredictable, alternating between being easily irritated and completely shutting down. He became distant, defensive, and would yell at me over the smallest things. Besides not working, he no longer did anything to help me around the house. As a result, household responsibilities piled up, and I found myself carrying the weight of everyday life without his support while watching him drift further away. Even so, I still loved him, so I thought maybe we could still get through this. However, things only got worse. Sam started fighting with me if I stayed out too late, whether it was because of work or just to relax with friends. One Friday, I came home and found him sitting on the couch waiting for me. He would ask me several questions about why I was out so late and who I had been spending so much time with. Even if I answered honestly, he would imply that he didn't believe me and accused me of maybe sleeping with my coworkers or friends, saying that was why I was never home. Hearing these unfounded accusations from him was painful and offensive. No matter what I said to reassure him that I would never do that, he simply didn't listen. As a result, we began having intense and exhausting arguments, where he demanded that I come straight home after work and even on weekends. He wanted me to stay home with him, as if my time belonged only to him. I started to feel suffocated, as if the space I once had in our marriage was shrinking, replaced by his insecurities and anger. Things worsened when his frustration began to spill over physically. There were 2 alarming instances where he crossed a line I never thought he would cross. In one of our arguments, he punched the wall just above my head in a fit of rage. A violent display that left me uneasy and cautious. But the real breaking point came when, during another heated moment, he slapped me, and I almost fell to the ground. My husband is much bigger than me, so I was completely shaken. That moment was a clear sign to me that his pain and depression had turned into something darker and more dangerous. I realized I couldn't stay in a relationship where my safety and well-being were at risk, so I packed my bags, ready to leave him and protect myself. Seeing me ready to walk out the door sent him into a state of despair. He begged me to stay, repeatedly promising he would change. I held firm, telling him that for me to even consider staying, he would need to seek real help. He agreed, saying he would see a doctor if that meant he had a chance to save our marriage. Reluctantly, I decided to give our relationship one last chance, hoping he would truly commit to the help he so clearly needed. It was a difficult decision, filled with doubts, but I wanted to believe that the man I fell in love with could still find his way back to himself and to us. It was then that Sam was diagnosed with severe depression. He began taking medication and, weekly, he started meditating to help control his anger. Eventually, I saw some positive changes start to emerge. Slowly, the medication seemed to help stabilize his mood, and he made genuine efforts to be more present and help around the house. Little by little, I saw glimpses of the person he used to be, the man I fell in love with, and that gave me hope. He showed more willingness to reconnect, and I felt a bit of relief, thinking that maybe, with time, things could improve for us. However, one big issue remained unresolved: his reluctance to return to work and start earning money. He has been unemployed since the diagnosis, and this has been a constant source of tension between us. I don't mind being the only one bringing in all the money. However, I want him to at least try. Every time I bring up the subject, hoping to encourage him to consider something, even a part-time job or a position he could do from home, he resists, insisting that he feels too low and weak to commit to any work. This disagreement ended up causing us to yell at each other. On one hand, I know he's struggling, but on the other, the added financial pressure and his refusal to even explore options left me frustrated and alone in carrying all the responsibilities. Last month, Sam surprised me by suggesting we see a couples counselor. He shared that, with our ongoing relationship issues, he felt we should consult someone who could help us communicate more effectively and resolve some of our problems. He then continued by saying that he had already contacted a counselor and scheduled an appointment. All I had to do was show up. I agreed, thinking that this counselor could help strengthen our relationship and maybe offer him encouragement and support to take the first steps in rebuilding his life back to normal. However, I can honestly say that couples therapy made our relationship worse. During the sessions, he admitted that much of his depression came from the life we had built together. He feels that he hasn't been able to live the way he wanted, as being married brought so much responsibility. He also mentioned that he still misses his ex-girlfriends and wished his best friend hadn't taken her away from him. In fact, after his ex's betrayal, he never really healed and feels like he just lost his life. The more he shared during the sessions, the more I felt like a spectator in my own marriage. He said he felt he rushed into marrying me, without having time to enjoy being single and without exploring what he wanted for himself after the hurt from his ex-girlfriend. I was surprised and reminded him that he was the one who proposed to me and that we had dated for a long time before getting married. So, how did he feel rushed? The counselor interrupted me and encouraged my husband to keep speaking his truth, even if it hurt my feelings. In the following sessions, Sam began confessing to me, in front of the counselor, that he wanted a second chance at the single life. However, since we were already married, he asked if I would consider letting him see other people while I remained committed to our marriage. I laughed at his question, thinking it was a joke. However, he argued that he deserved to experience both the single life and married life at the same time, and that it was fair for him to have the opportunity to explore and find himself before it was too late for him. I was shocked by the suggestion and couldn't help but tell him how absurd and painful it was. I told him that his demand was outrageous and unacceptable. If he wanted to live like a single man and explore, I could make that happen by completely leaving the marriage. I wouldn't stay in a relationship where I was expected to be loyal while he was free to act however he wanted with strangers. My words seemed to hit him, and Sam became furious. He responded that I could never understand his feelings, because, unlike him, I had been with several people before we got together. I calmly reminded him that I only had 2 relationships before him, both serious and meaningful commitments that just didn't work out. It hurt that he tried to use my past against me, as if my experiences somehow made me less deserving of expecting commitment in our marriage. I told him that if he felt so strongly about living a single life, he should have thought about that before we got married. I reminded him that I had made sacrifices for our relationship this year, especially. I was the one who kept our home, supporting him financially and emotionally during his depression, all because I believed in our marriage and in him. But now he was making irrational demands. It was as if he wanted the security and stability I provided without honoring the commitment that came with it, and I couldn't allow that. I firmly told him that he couldn't have both. He needed to make a choice. It was a life committed to me or a single life without me. He couldn't keep me in limbo, hoping I would bend to his desires while he kept one foot out the door. Since that confrontation in front of our counselor, Sam has been pushing around the house, acting like I'm the irrational one. He repeatedly tried to convince me that I'm being too harsh and even selfish for refusing to let him have fun. He keeps insisting that if I really loved him, I would be more open and support his desire to explore. His attempts to make me feel guilty for not agreeing clearly show that he still doesn't understand, or refuses to understand, how disrespectful and unfair his request is. I am firm. I've tried to be compassionate, understanding, and supportive through the ups and downs of his depression, but there are limits that I won't compromise on. I don't believe being open-minded means sacrificing my own self-respect and the integrity of our marriage. I refuse to let him manipulate me into thinking I'm the one who's wrong. So, am I wrong for refusing to let my husband see other people while we're married? Update for everyone wondering if Sam might be cheating and using this as a way to justify his behavior. Honestly, I don't think that's the case. My husband hardly ever leaves the house. He's constantly around, playing video games or just immersed in his own thoughts. Irony, if he were having an affair, at least I would have clarity and a direct reason to leave. Yes, it would hurt, but at least I would know that he could move on without me. Instead, I'm stuck dealing with this painful and confusing situation. As for everyone wondering why the deaths of Sam's ex and best friend affected him so much all of a sudden, I don't know either, but I'm just assuming it may have given him a wake-up call. These were people he knew well, and maybe losing them so unexpectedly made him spiral. I'm not sure, but I've never really understood why it hit him so hard to the point of making him feel so bad, or why he thinks destroying our marriage and sleeping around would somehow fix this depression. As one commenter pointed out in my post, maybe Sam never really loved me throughout our marriage. Maybe he just saw me as a safety net, someone reliable and loyal after his relationship with his ex, and he liked that. Maybe he still has unresolved feelings for his ex and now regrets not giving her a chance. Whatever the case, it's ridiculous that my husband now wants an open relationship, something I never would have expected, as I'm deeply committed to monogamy. If he had hinted at wanting this type of arrangement before, I would never have married him in the first place. This sudden change feels like a complete betrayal of the life and values we built together. The reason I haven't left yet is that I truly care about his mental health. He's been my partner for so long, and for years, it really seemed like it was just me and him against the world. He's never been this bad or selfish. He has never raised his hand to me or yelled at me. When he started changing so drastically after the tragic accident involving his ex-girlfriend and best friend, I told myself it was just a phase and that he would find his way back in time. I wanted to believe that the man I fell in love with was still there, just buried under all the pain and suffering. But now, after everything that has happened, I have finally accepted that it's time to choose myself. This marriage has clearly come to an end. It's been 2 weeks since my last update. I took the next step for myself and sought out a private lawyer to begin the divorce process. Sam and I co-own our house and have a joint account. But since he's still unemployed and our financial situation is already complicated, I needed to protect my assets first before proceeding with the divorce paperwork. As soon as the lawyer told me everything was finalized, I was preparing to give him the news. Then, yesterday, Sam crossed a line that I simply could not ignore anymore, and I realized I could no longer keep silent. We were at Sam's sister's house for a family lunch. His family is incredibly kind to me, and we've always had a good relationship, so I was looking forward to seeing everyone. To provide context, his family knows that we've been having some issues in our marriage, but no one knows the whole story. During lunch, I noticed Sam was continuously drinking. He had been strongly discouraged from drinking due to his ongoing medications, so seeing him with a glass of whiskey immediately raised red flags for me. When I gently tried to talk to him about it, he mocked me, ignored me, and kept drinking. I felt very disrespected, so I let him do whatever he wanted. Later, during the meal, while everyone was talking about their lives, Sam's mother asked how things were going between us and how my work was going. I mentioned that we were going to couples therapy and that Sam still needed to resolve his issues. I continued talking about my work when Sam interrupted, making a comment that caught me off guard. He said that his depression could be cured faster if his wife understood what he really wanted in his life. His mother asked what he meant by that. That's when Sam openly declared, in front of his entire family, that I was the reason his life was so miserable. Everyone stopped eating and just stared at him, confused. They could all see that he was already drunk. Sam went on to say how I refused to give him what he wanted and that I was nothing but a conservative, insecure, and possessive wife who was making him feel suffocated. I could hardly believe what I was hearing, how he was twisting the narrative and placing all the blame on me. His sister immediately asked why he was talking about me like that. She and I were close, so she seemed furious with her brother. The rest of his family sat in silence, stunned, clearly shocked by his harsh accusations. I felt humiliated and betrayed, sitting there, listening as he kept explaining to everyone that all he wanted was a little thing for me, but I refused to give it to him just out of stubbornness. Hearing this, I exploded. The way he was trying to paint me as the villain in front of his family was so painful. I turned to Sam and demanded to know why he wasn't being honest with his family and telling them the whole truth about what he really wanted from me. I looked at his family and, with all the frustration and pain I had been holding in, I told them exactly what Sam had asked me. How he wanted to explore other relationships, basically sleep with strangers, while I remained loyal to him. How he expected me to continue being a supportive wife while he enjoyed his carefree life. I told everything, revealing the truth he had been hiding. His family was stunned. His mother asked Sam if that was really what he was asking me. And then his father, who had always been kind to me, scolded him for being so ridiculous and asked if he had really lost his mind. However, Sam was still trying to justify himself. He insisted that everyone's marriage goes through a standstill, and he believed this solution he was proposing would help solve the problems in our marriage. Sam justified it by saying this was just temporary, that I should feel lucky he was asking for permission, when so many men simply cheat on their wives without anyone finding out. I screamed at him, saying I was tired of him acting this way, trying to justify his sick excuses and selfish behavior. It was a breaking point for me. I announced in front of everyone that I was done with him. I couldn't keep fighting for a marriage he no longer valued. I told him, without beating around the bush, that our marriage was over and that I would be sending him the divorce papers. His face looked stunned, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. He blinked slowly and just stared at my face. I handed him my lawyer's card and told him I would be moving out that very day, and if he wanted to talk to me about the divorce, he could contact my lawyer. His parents, understandably concerned, tried to comfort me, saying that Sam was probably acting this way because of his medication, that he really didn't know what he was saying or doing. They seemed to be looking for a way to excuse his behavior, trying to explain it away as just a temporary lapse. But I told them their son was nothing but a loser who had been dragging me down in the past few months with his talk about depression and mourning. There was no more waiting, no more hope that things would change. I had given everything I could to this relationship, only for him to repeatedly disrespect me. This time, I was going to put myself first. Sam tried to argue in a gentle way that I couldn't just leave our marriage over something as silly as this and that we needed to go back to therapy to work things out. I bitterly laughed at his suggestion, shaking my head. I told him he absolutely needed a counselor, but that didn't mean I did. I wasn't crazy or sick like him. I wasn't the one going around making reckless, selfish demands or blaming my partner for my own bad choices. I made it clear I wasn't going to waste any more time trying to fix a marriage I no longer wanted to fix. Without saying anything more, I left his sister's house and went straight to our house, where I started packing my things. When Sam finally came home, in an Uber, screaming my name frantically, I was already ready to leave. When he arrived, he immediately tried the same old tactic of begging again, insisting we could overcome this setback in our marriage. He even tried to grab my luggage to stop me from leaving, but I told him that if he tried to stop me, I would call the police and make our divorce process even more difficult for him. I firmly asked him not to stop me from leaving with my things, and reluctantly, he let me go. Then I quickly packed up my things and went to a hotel. Thank you all for the comments. I feel much better after everything. Since that day, I've been living in a hotel. Sam has sent me several voice messages. At one point, he accuses me of being insensitive, saying I'm ruining everything, and at another, he apologizes for his behavior, expressing how sorry he is for what he did. It has been an emotional roller coaster, and it's clear to me now that he is trying to manipulate the situation, playing with my emotions to make me reconsider. But at this point, I'm not giving in. His words don't change the fact that I made a decision based on the person he became, and I won't go back. I've heard enough apologies and false promises. I need to focus on moving forward and healing from everything that happened. To clear up any confusion once and for all, I'm not leaving my ex because of his depression. I have great respect for people who struggle with mental health issues. Depression is a serious battle, and I don't want to downplay it. However, when it comes to my relationship with my ex, I am simply exhausted by his lack of responsibility. He constantly used his situation as an excuse to demand whatever he wanted from me. That's not fair. I gave more than enough of myself trying to help him, but there comes a point where no one can carry all that weight alone. Since I left him, I've felt so much better. I've been able to focus on myself, and being away from him has decreased my anxiety. It's also heartbreaking to end my marriage, but I have to step away for my own mental and emotional health. It's been 4 months since my last update. I didn't update anything before because nothing was finalized until this month. Sam and I are officially divorced, and I can finally say that I'm a free woman. Sam and I split the proceeds from the sale of our house equally. Thankfully, we didn't have any major debt or children, so there were no alimony payments involved. This day didn't come easily. There were countless moments where Sam and his family tried everything they could to change my mind, to convince me to stay, to believe that things could somehow go back to normal. His mother, for example, came to see me several times after I moved out. She sided with her son during the divorce process and was constantly trying to make me feel guilty for leaving. She kept saying that he needed a partner who supported him, like I did, and that it was my duty to stay because of our marriage vows. At first, I tried to be polite, arguing with her, but as she kept coming back, I became more frustrated with her approach. Finally, during one of her visits, I decided to be honest with her. I told her that Sam once slapped me out of anger and that I should have left him much earlier. I asked her if her own husband had done that, would she have stayed? I told her that, despite everything, I had stayed, even though Sam didn't deserve my forgiveness. She was completely shocked by what I said. After that, she never came to bother me again. During the divorce process, I noticed that Sam sank even deeper into his depression, and honestly, he seems worse than before. I hope his family can get him the help he needs. Sam's sister is the only one who believes I did the right thing by leaving her brother. She and I are still friends today. I finally moved to a place of my own. Honestly, as a newly divorced woman, it's so liberating to be free from my ex. I'm proud of myself for trusting my instincts and choosing to leave a toxic relationship before things could get any worse. Now, I wake up when I want, without having to answer to anyone. I can focus on my career without distractions and spend time with my coworkers and friends without feeling guilty. I come and go as I please, and it's a feeling I haven't had in a long time. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm truly living for myself again, without the weight of sadness and someone else's demands dragging me down. And for me, that's worth everything.